Want to welcome up to the stage a couple of gentlemen. First, from FORESIGHT Sports, the Director of Business Development, Mr. Tim Briand, and the CEO of Virginia Country Club, Mr. Jamie Mulligan. You know, a lot of us are familiar, there's a lot of technologies in our business now, and obviously fun debate and discussion about what all of them are and what they do. We're lucky enough to have had our hands on a bunch of it at Virginia, and Jamie, with his coaching of obviously several tour players and using it at the highest level, we've been lucky to see FORESIGHT and use it at our club. And there's a bunch of, there's ups and downs to everything, and technologies are always improving and changing. But I know for Jamie, one of the cool things, if you think about kind of where you're watching golf from, if we're spectating at a tour event, we're going to be out in the fairway or behind the green or behind the tee box. And if you're teaching or coaching, you're probably standing pretty close to your player. I know Jamie does like to stand at a little bit of a unique angle. He likes to get out in front of his players and sort of look back toward the hitting area, and not as much looking at the golf ball or downrange. And FORESIGHT's been a great product for that because it allows him to watch golf, watch impact, watch the golf club hitting the golf ball and the player as they move through the golf ball without having to watch the ball so much downrange. We're going to let the two of you speak a little bit to that and about why the product's so great at that part of the business.
Thank you, Steve. The Bents, if you haven't noticed, are the most articulate family in Orange County. So it'd be nice to hear you for the next couple of days. Shar did an amazing job, and Steve will do as well, too. And Steve, I was going to tell you what a pleasure it is to get to work with you. Steve, in my opinion, is the best natural club fitter that I've worked with. A natural club fitter means we can go out and fit somebody, whoever it might be, and I can stand at what we call the Jamie angle, which is looking back there and watching the ball get hit. And I can tell Steve what I think we need to do to motion based on anatomy and based on movement and how we're going to fix that. And then Steve can put him into specs. And we've tag teamed that for a long, long time. Steve's background, he grew up in Yorba Linda. When I met him, he told me he was 14 and looked like he was 40, or told me he was 16. He was probably 14 or 15 and looked like he was 40, and acted more mature than anybody that we hired at Coyote Hills. And we've been together ever since. So we've got to work on a daily basis. We're really close in our offices, and all day long we're having a good time in work. But when we get down and we do business, it's great. And the beauty of Steve is not only can he fit from an elementary player, he can fit to the best tour players that I know. So Steve, thanks. It's been nice to have the relationship with you as far as this goes. And then you, this has been magic for me as far as the machine goes. We call it the quad, they call it FORESIGHT. You're seeing that on tour all the time. I think, Bryce, can you give me that shot, please? This would be Patrick. At the tour championship. I think this was I want to say this was Monday afternoon before a rain delay after Caves Valley, and we just came out to hit some balls to kind of get loose. And the angle, I'm shooting that angle. It's not gone on about my video work, but that's just basically what we're shooting. So for you as instructors, I see that as delivery motion, and I want to see what the club's doing to make contact with the golf ball. And then I want to get that picture in my mind. And Patrick immediately is ball and then back right down to the machine to see normalized carry, and that's all he's doing. Every tour player that we have has one of the machines. They also have TrackMan as well, a couple of them, and some of them have just gone to FORESIGHT and the quad completely. So then the question to you for all our buddies here is, why does that work as far as that picture goes? And why don't you give us a little bit on that, please, Tim?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of conversion out at the PGA Tour in the last year and a half, 2 years. As we'll chat about later on today, we've actually seen the majority of the tour switch over into quad in the last couple of years. And there are two main functions, I think, that are really helpful. One is, as Jamie mentioned, the normalized carry distance. We have a barometer baked into the unit. And with that barometer, we're able to take measurements of air density and air pressure specific to the environment and run the flight model through those specific numbers. So what that means is you can get your distances specific to whatever elevation. Just this year out at the US Open, the difference between morning and afternoon with the marine layer, it's about 7 yards. And that's something that the players were able to figure out through usage of quad, which the other competitors' technologies unfortunately don't share. And then obviously the on-course usage, being able to get it onto the golf course, use it for chips, pitches, sand shots even, being able to use it off the fairway, out of the rough. It's just a wonderful tool for folks to be able to figure out how far they're hitting it out of specific conditions relative to their baseline.
Yeah, and if you really think about it from our standpoint, and I like to dummy it down, like him and I have kind of laughed and tried not to have conversations the last couple of days because he can take you down the geek golf rabbit hole, and I don't want to go there, especially after being with golf pros all day long. Not that I don't love you guys, but it's time not to talk about golf for a while, right? And he can go and knows exactly what he's talking about, and he's studied it completely. But for, as simply as I can say it is, TrackMan for us, while great, it's been a great tool, it's taking a picture of how the golf ball is getting hit. And if you really think about it, you only bring 3 things to the party, right? You bring the player, the club, and the ball. And our job is to figure what the club is doing to the ball based on who the player is. So that's the last part of the equation. I love when Chris went through his process. By Chris, are you here? Chris, nice job yesterday. Let's give him a hand. That was really nice to hear, yeah. All the presenters have been fabulous, but that was great, Chris. But anyways, like in my process first is I want to see what the club does to the ball. And then I don't ever want to look at the ball. I never, ever look at the ball. If I can't tell them what the ball is doing, then I'm not doing my work. And I think that's a good thing for you all to do is to train yourself in a position where you can get up in front of them a little bit without getting yourself in danger's way. That's a disclaimer right there that I'd like all of you to sign before you leave. So without getting in danger's way, and take a picture where the ball's actually being hit and be able to see that. And this thing's filming exactly what the ball's doing. So when the day the machine got there, I started laughing. And I think the only guy that was laughing more than me was the salesman on tour that's selling the quad every day, because he's got 8 or 9 of them, and then we warm up, and by the time that we leave, they're all gone. Meaning people are buying them, they're buying 2, they're buying 3. If you think about for the cost of what they're doing, for the money that they're playing with, it makes a bunch of sense. Why don't you give us 2 of the things that you see, one, why you, in the development of the machine, how it came about, and I know that you know that story, and then where you're going as a company, please.
Absolutely. So, you know, the quad was born from stereoscopic optical capture, and basically the idea is taking multiple cameras to be able to find the fixed position of an object while it's in motion. And that actually came from manufacturing from the high volume manufacturers across overseas. Camera optical specialists were working on cameras that could track things at high speed. And the thought came to mind, why don't we start tracking, you know, in this particular use case, golf balls. So that's a little bit of the genesis of the actual product. Our first product was GC2, which a lot of folks are familiar with. It's been in the field for about 10 years. Just replaced this year, actually last week, by GC3, which we'll talk about a little bit at lunch. But that's kind of the genesis of the product and where it has evolved to. As far as where it's going, we'll talk about a little bit about that more at lunch as well. But we're very excited. We were just acquired 3 weeks ago. It gives us funding, resource to capital to grow. And the biggest thing is we're trying to build an all-encompassing solution that's able to not just track the club and the ball, but potentially the body and other aspects of performance to be able to use it in all environments, golf course, home simulator, as well as the driving range. So it's going to be exciting, and being able to connect teachers to their students remotely is a big objective coming up over the next 3 years to allow teachers to be able to connect with their students and give remote lessons.
Very cool. Tim, one thing just from the fitter standpoint too, and I know that everyone in the audience can relate, we don't always fit tour players, or we rarely fit tour players, and we sometimes rarely fit what we would think of as good amateur players. One thing about tracking the golf ball versus impact, if you're fitting Mrs. Haverkamp at your club, you might not get to see the golf ball fly very much. So how well can we fit her for equipment and get her into something that fits her properly so that when she swings nicely, it does fly well. So if we're looking at just the golf ball, obviously, in the fitting environment, that can be a tough read a lot of times for a player that's a beginning player or not as skilled a player. You know, the ability to see the golf club at impact and what the golf club does is fantastic. And in my opinion, a huge element to fitting, the average player, which is the majority of the golf world. So, Tim, thank you very much. Jamie, thank you. And we're going to move on to our next part of the morning. Thank you.